Hello, good morning, and welcome to Inspire Me Forward. My name is Linda Watson. I am the founder and your host, and I am so excited because this is number 30. Louise, I'm so happy you're here to celebrate number 30 and episode 30 with us. We've been going about a year and a half now, so that's just. I was hoping I had one of those little things you have at New Year's. I don't know what you call them, but those
A
little
blower.
or those little things. I was hoping I could find one of those, but I didn't. So, woohoo! I'm thrilled that we are hitting number 30, and I'm so glad that you are here to share it with me.
Me
So,
too.
yeah,
And Linda, just a quick, do you need to share the screen you want to share?
I am. And now I'm stop sharing it.
Oh, because I
Yeah.
saw all your,
No, we were, and now we're not. And there you are. So,
there I am. Hello. I don't have to see my
there we
picture.
go. So, a little bit about Inspire Me Forward. It was started really as a virtual circle. It was a way to offer space to our guests to share their stories. It was also a way to offer circle to folks that wanted to join us in the moment or afterwards, and really to let people know that they're not alone in whatever we were talking about. We've talked about leaps of faith. We've talked about leaving challenging situations or situations that were no longer right for us. We've talked about life. We've talked about death. We've talked about grief. We've talked about joy. And it's to me, it's a way that we can just share that we're not alone in this
Mm.
journey that we take. And really that's what we're all about. And I am so happy that we're still going and still having wonderful people like yourself to talk about. So, Louise Gallagher, I would love for you to just take a moment and say hello and introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Louise. I'm in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I turned 70 last year, which is a big thing for me because it's what has launched me into this new part of my life. And so that's an important part for me that I'm in my seventh decade, and I entered it as excited as my grandson, who turned 5 a year ago, February, and that was my goal. I'm an artist, a writer, a storyteller, and I love life.
Lovely. Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to dive into life with
Mm.
you. Oh, and Pam that's joined us is just turning 16, coming 69. So excellent. And I'm 62. So there we go. That's awesome. So I've been, as always happens when I have a guest coming on and we've decided on a theme, I just let it sit and I listen to the world around me, and always something appears. And there has been so much sort of come into my realm as of late, and talking about different things and thinking about preparing for death, but so we can live better
Mhm.
and we can live in the moment and live more joyfully. I heard a call the other day, and it was a lady in England that they actually go into homes and after people have passed. Now,
Mm.
this conversation I know isn't about that, but what the whole thing was is preparing beforehand so they don't have to do as much afterwards. And it was this, well, have a preparation book, then put it away
Mm.
and be joyful enjoy your moments and enjoy life. And yeah, that there was so much. And then there's this bit about aging. And I read something the other day that in a book that was just like, nobody wants to hear about an old woman aging. I'm like, well, hell yes, they do. And Louise really makes it. Yes, we're here. So it was a really interesting, just a comment. The book itself, but that comment really stuck out to me. Is like, no, we want to. And there's the bit of that wisdom that comes up
Mhm.
as we move along in life. And then what do we embrace? You embraced your 70th birthday like a 5-year-old. That was amazing. And what do we embrace, and what can we really find joy in as we move along. And instead of aging, I love your it's becoming.
Hmm.
I love that. It's almost like birthing.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah.
So yeah. So before we get really into our, wisdom part of this, I always have a question I ask every guest. And interestingly, this morning I pulled a card from my deck, and it was the art of receiving.
My goodness.
So, and that ties into our first question. And my first question is always, can you tell us about a time that you were the receiver of an act of kindness, be it random, be it not, but not the giver, but the receiver? So I will hand that to you.
Thanks. Well, yeah, I worked in the homeless serving sector for almost 2 decades here in Calgary. And I began at what was and still is Canada's largest adult emergency shelter, the drop-in center. And it's a big shelter. It sleeps about 1,000, or it did. They've brought it down, which is good, but it slept about 1,000 people a night. And when I came on board, I was the director of communications, but I'm also an artist, and a church had donated some money for an art program, and it had sat in an account and nothing had happened to it. And I thought, well, you know what? I can I can start a little art program and do it on Thursday nights in my own time, and that'll be great. And so I did. And there was one gentleman who used to sit on the second floor of the shelter because it's a 24/7 shelter. And during the day, he'd sit in the basically the eating the day area, and he would paint. And so on Thursday evenings, I'd go down, or Thursday afternoons, I'd go down to the second floor and I'd walk around and say, hey, anybody want to come paint or write or whatever you want to do? We've got the studio space open. Come on up. And his name was Max, and I'm allowed to tell his story because he's given me permission. But every day I'd go to Max and I'd say, hey, Max, do you want to come upstairs? The studio, like it's the big multi-purpose area, but we're on the sixth floor, we're overlooking the river. It's beautiful, quiet, calm. "Mm, no, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready." And this went on for probably a few months. And one day I finally just said, so Max, have you picked a day to be ready? And Max went, no. And I said, well, why not pick today? And he said, sure. And so he came up and he started to paint. And then from the paint, he is incredibly talented. From the painting, we also incorporated theater arts, we incorporated writing workshops and music. And Max took part in an incredible program that we did with a playwright, Analia Gilbertson. And we put on a play, and it was a musical, and he wrote a song for it. It was wonderful. Fast forward a few years, I've left the shelter and I'm working at the Homeless Foundation. And I write a blog almost every morning. In those days, I wrote it every morning. And one day I wrote a poem called Dare. My blog is called Dare Boldly. And so I wrote this poem called Dare, and I put it on my blog. And a few weeks later, I get an email from Max, who's still living at the shelter or staying at the shelter. And he says, I really liked your poem, so I've written a piece of music for it. And I'd love you to record it and send the recording to me, and I'll dress it up. And I was overwhelmed. It was such a beautiful act of kindness and such an amazing gift to receive. And so often we think of individuals experiencing homelessness as having nothing.
Mm.
And we forget those are just the things. But what they have are these rich experiences and lives, and they carry this label homeless. And so therefore we tend to diminish them. And it was Max who one day said to me, as part of a play that he was also involved in, he said, I am a man, I am a father, I am a son, I am a brother, I am an artist, I am a musician, I am a carpenter. I laugh, I cry, I bleed when I am cut. Which of these is diminished because I am homeless? And in Max's gift to me, I mean, nothing was diminished. In fact, what he did was create bounty and more. in the world
Mm.
of beauty.
Wow. Those are powerful words.
Yeah.
The gift of word he has as well. Wow.
Oh,
That
yeah.
is amazing. Wow. Thank you for that story. I love those stories. I love that we all have these acts of kindness that we have received. And every one of them has been from the heart for the heart. And it's just and it touches my heart that every time that I hear them. Um it's just they're almost beyond words.
Mm-hmm.
The words to share them, but the feeling is just beyond words that we get
Yeah.
when we receive those acts and when we give them too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's love. Thank you for sharing that. So you have, I'd like to as we talked before, let's focus today on this your journey of this movement that you've created with aging. We'll
Mm-hmm.
start with that word and we'll use becoming at the end. Um, but you've got a Facebook page called She Dares. You've got um, your radical bold aging, your course. Uh, I'd love to hear and give you some time to talk about what brought you there. What brought you to that? So as much time as you need, but what brought you to that space where you said, no, let's do this differently.
Well, the first one is about giving back. And I mean, I worked, as I said, in the not-for-profit in the homeless serving sector for almost 20 years. And in 2019, I was the executive director of a family homeless shelter. And it wasn't a role I had wanted, but the previous executive director had left and they needed somebody to step in and they asked if I would. And I said, sure. You know, and at the time I think I was turning 60. I was turning 66. And so I stepped in and I excelled. I did really well. And I did some things that they had never been able to achieve and had wanted to achieve for quite a while, brought them in some funding from the government that they'd never been able to get. It was, so it was really good. And so they asked me if I wanted to stay on as the ED, executive director. And I said, yeah, commitment. And I thought, 5 years, like, I don't know what I'm going to want to be doing. I don't want to pin myself down for 5 years. And so I said, I can commit to 2. But 5 is like, that wouldn't be ethical of me to commit to 5. And they said, no, we really want a 5-year commitment. Your runway's not long enough. And it was that your runway's not long enough that I thought, ow.
Wow.
I'd never thought of it in that way, right? And so we agreed that would I would then just step out of the role once they found someone, which they did. And I think it was about 6, 7, 8 months later that they did. And so I stepped away and I thought, okay, fine. I'm going to hang up my shingle and I'm going to play in my studio and that'll be it. And part of that was because I was still musing on this, my runway's not long enough. What does that mean to me? And after having spent almost 20 years in the homeless serving sector, the piece I didn't realize was how burnt out I was. And it took me about 6 months to a year to really just find my footing. And then my mother passed away, and very shortly out, like within 2 weeks, the first lockdown happened.
Okay.
And so then it was okay, so I'm retired. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? And I mean, and in lockdown, it was interesting. It was a beautiful time to slow down and just be present. It also meant that the volunteering that I was doing in person before, I couldn't do, but I was on the board of a film festival that is focused on issues around aging and shifting the narrative, Third Action Film Festival. And it's around shifting the narrative around aging. And so that was a great opportunity to really dive deep into the issues of aging. and the symbolic annihilation that we experience as we
Mm-hmm.
age. Because what happens is when we don't see ourselves in popular media and mass media, when we stop seeing ourselves in films, we begin to think we don't count, we're not relevant. And that's why it's just a symbolic annihilation, because it's not a conscious, but it's there. And we do begin to think we count less, and we start to diminish ourselves. And so, when that all came together, and then within the first year of lockdown, a friend who was the CEO at another called me and said, "Hey, I really need your skill set. I really need some support in the communications and the advocacy and government relations work," which is what I
Mm-hmm.
had spent the majority of my career in. "And can you come back to work for 3 days a week? You work from home, you never come to the office. It'll be great." And I really like this guy. And I said, "Absolutely." And I loved it. And it reminded me that I still have skills and things to provide, and wisdom to share that counts.
Yeah.
And I'm a creative person. So I brought this energy that nobody else was
Mm-hmm.
bringing to that area. And so it was great. And then, as I was sort of looking at my 70s and I watched my grandson turn 5, I kept thinking, wow, like, 70 is a big number. And I remember my mother at 70 and my father at 70, and he passed away at 72, no, 74.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mother would have been 72 when he passed away. And I remember they were old to me. And I thought, but I don't feel old. I don't think of myself as old. So why would I just start acting old? As and that's not about acting old. It was more the diminishment of myself
Yeah.
is what that means. And so I thought, okay, but I don't have a plan. I don't have a plan on how I'm going to age for this
Yep.
next 8 or 2 or 3, whatever I have left. And I thought, I think I need a plan,
Mm.
because if I don't plan for it, I'm just going to slip into it and it's just going to be what it is. And there's no becoming then. There's just sort of the
Mm-hmm.
being in it.
Being in it. Yeah.
And so I started to decide, okay, what's my plan? Well, my plan is I am going to continue to give back, and I'm going to give back in a way that is really focused on what I am passionate about. And I get passionate about things, and I drive into them. I dive into them. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what I started to do. And then when I was turning 70, it became, okay, so what do you do next, Louise? Like you've got this plan, and I read Isabel Allende's book, Soul of a Woman.
Mm-hmm.
That really, she said in that book, one of the things she said was, people always ask her at 84, like, why don't you just slow down? And her response was, why should I?
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, I have tons of energy still. I can still outdance my daughters, so I'm gonna just keep going. And so that's what happened. And then I started my radical uh, bold aging pathway with the course. I thought, well, I love to teach, I
Mm-hmm.
love to coach, and I believe that anything we do starts from the inside if it is going to have relevance. I have to go inside to become what it is I want, need to express on
Mm-hmm.
the outside.
Yeah.
And so that's where I create that work, that body of work. And I launched the first 8-week program in January, and I just launched my third cohort of it. So yeah.
Nice. Oh, congratulations on all of that.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's so like that runway. I can see how that statement. As I'm jotting, I'm a note taker, so I'm jotting notes down, and I wrote beside that, "Who's flying the plane?"
Yeah.
It was like I can land on a runway, any size of runway. Like it's my plane. Like I get to do what I want with it. I'll land in a field.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's a
it was a stunner. Like it was a
oh,
stunner.
that'd be yeah, bit of a punch. Yeah. But so thank you for sharing that part. I'd love to jump into maybe a bit about aging in art. That like you say, that symbolic annihilation, and that just this expectation of what aging looks like. And nobody wants to see what an old woman does with her life. It's like I come from the horse world, and just we tend to it's let's say we it's sort of known that as a horse gets older and not or useful, it gets put to pasture. It gets, it's not useful anymore, so we don't need it anymore. And there is a reflection in that
Hmm.
in the human world where, you're not needed anymore. And I think that's changed from, I think it's a circular thing because in, generations ago, the same home, you were in the same home as you got older, and you were wise, and you were you passed on recipes. There was so much and wisdom and wealth in that generation. So what's been this change? I just love to hear your wisdom on that, or your insight. Like, what's been this change, and where are we going?
Well, some of it comes from the Industrial Revolution,
Yeah.
right? And because the Industrial Revolution was about making people useful, right? Putting
Mm,
people to work. And there was a recognition that there was a limited supply of jobs and supply of people. And so what happened was, people came into the workforce, but then they needed to move them out
mm, yeah.
so that more people could come into the workforce. And that continued. And it was interesting in the Second World War when women moved into the factories because the men went off to fight the war. When they came back, the whole
Ugh,
the whole
yeah.
emphasis was on, ooh, let's make homemaking a wonderful all and
Yeah.
they created all these appliances that could make the woman's life easier at home
Mm,
because she had to go back home.
yes.
And so there's always been, and I focus on women and aging.
Mm,
That is,
mhm.
where I focus. We all age, but my
Yeah.
heart is as a woman. And what happens is that, or what happened was that we began to believe that, oh, there is an age that says, you're old now.
Just before
Your
days.
usefulness is done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Off you go.
Yeah.
Make room for the young people, which is important, absolutely, because we want to ensure that, they're able to move up. But
Mm-hmm.
our collective wisdom is essential.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we forget that in order for our collective wisdom to be heard and known, we need to speak up.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are so many, as yours, there are so many um, programs and places where people are, even as in books, people are saying, no, I have a lot to say. you
Yeah.
know, that 70, 80 year long life, I've got a lot to say. Um,
Yeah.
I know my father, again, talk about women, but my father was 94. He had a lot to say.
Yeah.
He had a lot of wisdom in those 94 years. So interesting. And in the horse world, again, there I go back to that there are a lot of great programs where people are saying, no, these horses have a lot to say too,
Hmm.
and a lot of wisdom in those bones and in that soul. And let's look into it.
Yeah. And I think the other piece we face as women in particular is the cosmetic industry,
Mm,
right?
mm.
And the fixation on youth.
Oh
We have a
gosh.
collective adulation and adoration of youth.
Yes.
And so and so we have anti-aging creams. And I remember not long ago, I wrote a blog about my realization that I kind of never thought of this, but I bought some anti-aging cream and I'm aging.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet the message of an anti-aging cream
100%. Yeah.
is destructive.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We're trying to stop time.
Yeah. And
It doesn't work.
I always, they're my wisdom lines. They're not my wrinkles. They're my wisdom lines. But even
Course.
that is pejorative on a certain level because they are called wrinkles, but they show just how much I live life and how much I love life.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Oh, there's a
And
story with every one of the
yeah,
every scar, you know, every line, every role, everything. There's a story with it.
yeah.
And a
And
story
the
in it.
softening, like I love the
Yeah.
softening of my features, right?
Mm.
And I love my gray hair
Yeah,
and why wouldn't I? It's mine,
exactly. Oh,
right?
but it
And it's
takes a
loving
long time.
all of yourself, by loving
Yeah.
all of myself that allows me to simply be who I am at this age. And without having to measure myself against this idealistic reference point of, I'm not sure, smooth skin, wrinkle
Mm.
free, 110 pounds. I don't know.
Yeah. 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 Interesting. Interesting. So I'd like to read a piece from your blog this morning because I just
Okay.
love that. So it was what gets better with age, and that is from you said that was from WordPress. I put out
Mm-hmm.
a prompter this morning. Um, just gonna. Oh, so there's a piece here I'd love to read because I think it's so wise and it jumps us right into our next bit. Is as a child, I believe life improved with age. Well, that's largely true. Some things, like the scar under my chin from trying to hold reload a BB gun or resting my chin on it, don't get better. They get richer in stories. Life, it turned out, is a blend of growth and weathering, where some edges soften and some others gain character. I mean, that's right there. What you just said. That was, I mean,
Yeah.
that's so beautiful. And it really, it really settled into my heart. That's just,
Thank you.
yeah, that's so true. And it took me years to get my gray hair. I was a redhead. I was well, naturally a brown. Then I went red. I'm like, and it took me years to gain that courage to do this and just to go, that's you.
Yeah.
And it just so I think all go through this struggle of no, this is who I am.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah. I
yeah.
I dyed my hair twice.
Oh, really?
That's it.
That's
Because
great.
I'm lazy
Kudos.
when it
Oh,
comes
because
to and the upkeep that dyed hair required was just like, okay, this is nuts. I don't have, I don't have time. I was busy, busy, busy. And it was in my 50s and I was working in the homeless serving sector and I was like busy, busy, busy. And so I thought, oh, this is nuts. I'm too lazy to do that. So I'm not doing it anymore. And I just let it go.
that's great. That's great. Yeah.
But it's also personal choice. I mean,
Yeah.
it is. But I also think we've been sold a bill of goods
Mhm.
somewhere down the line,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yeah.
That this is what you need.
Yep.
Need to dye your hair.
Yep. Younger. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you asked me a question when we talked earlier and we talked before, and I thought it was such a beautiful question, and I wanted to throw it back to you. Um, how did you get so wise? I love that question. Oh, it just sat right
Yeah.
in me. So over to you on that one. How did you
Well,
get so?
thanks. I asked it of you, that
Yeah. So I'm going.
um how did I get so wise? I guess some of my life experience. Like I was the fourth child in our family, and I was supposed to be a boy. And I was a tomboy growing up. And I was always adventurous, and I was always just the wild child. I was called the brat. That was my nickname.
Mm,
But I also had, adverse childhood experiences that I had to grow through in order to find who am I? And I've always been curious about who am I really? Like, who am I
mm,
really behind this perfect smile that I had from childhood, and the pretty little girl? Who am I? And my mother was born in India, and it was a
mm,
French colony at the time. And she was very much, she was beautiful, but she was very much taken with presentation.
Mhm. Mhm.
And our family was messy. Like it was really messy, but we always had to look perfect, because
Oh,
people are watching.
yep.
And for me, I was so curious about it. I thought, why? Like, why do we have to look perfect and hide the other stuff? And I used to drive her crazy because she was very Catholic. And I used to ask, well, if God lives in church on Sundays, where is he the rest of the week? Which for my mother was, I don't ask those questions, but I've always asked questions.
Yeah.
And I think that's where wisdom comes from
Okay.
for any of us. It's the willingness to acknowledge, I don't know. So I'm going to go explore and I'm going to stay curious. Wisdom comes from asking questions, it comes from curiosity, it comes from the willingness to step into that mystery of life
Mhm.
and just be open to the experience as opposed to, as Wilkie says, live the questions and one day perhaps you'll find yourself in the answer. But the gift is to live the question.
Yeah, like that.
And so I think that's where, for me, it is that I've always just lived in the questions and the mystery. And I've always believed in wonder and awe, regardless of the
Mhm.
adversity around me or in my life. And
Mhm.
I'm an experiential learner. So I used to go for really big experiences, and some of them were not that wise. The choice of those experiences was not wise at the time.
At the time, yeah.
But in the aftermath of some of the things that happened, I mean, the richness, the gifts, the gems that I found,
Afterwards. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
are priceless.
Can you think of a time when you found or were given a certain bit of wisdom that sticks out?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I was in a relationship for almost 5 years in my mid to late 40s that almost killed me.
Mhm.
And in the end, the police arrested him, and I miraculously got my life back. During that relationship, he had done a lot of things to ensure that I stayed silent and frozen,
Mhm.
to the point where he knew that I had worked with young street teens. And he knew I knew what happened to young girls on the streets who go into the sex trade. And so he had told me that my daughter's lives were at risk because he was from an organized family and they were threatening to kidnap my daughters, drug them, and put them in the sex trade. So I stayed silent. I was terrified.
Mhm.
But there was a moment in time where something happened and I went to the police and I laid out everything that had happened. And they said, and so he told me, he'd received 3 bullets, some photographs, and some threats, but I didn't get them. He got them. I never saw them. And so it
Mhm.
was third party, right? And so the police told me there's nothing we can do about that because you don't have they weren't
Yep.
directly to you. And at the end of this time with this police detective in particular, he said, I got to tell you something. This isn't love. Love doesn't hurt that
Mhm.
much. And and when you're in an abusive relationship, people can say wise things, and it's just like, right? Because when I became so much his shill, like I was his shill, I was his fridge that he could open and close and just take something
Mhm.
out when he wanted it and close it again, and I'd be there humming away, waiting,
Mhm.
kind of thing. And so I heard this and I remember thinking, you have no idea. Like my daughter's lives are at risk. You
Right.
have no idea. Well, fast forward, 3 years, he's arrested. I get my life back. And I remember thinking, I have to heal from this love gone wrong.
Yeah.
And I stopped and that police detective's words came back to me.
Mhm.
This isn't love. Love doesn't hurt like that. And I realized I am not healing from a love gone wrong.
Mhm.
I am healing from abuse. And healing from abuse requires tender, loving care. It
Mm-hmm.
requires my self-compassion. It requires my self-support. It requires my self-forgiveness.
Yeah.
And so that wisdom of that statement, that in the moment just felt like it
Oh,
went
yeah.
like this,
Yeah.
came back and it informed so much of what I did to create my
Mm-hmm.
healing path so that I could reclaim my life, reclaim my relationship with my daughters who were deeply, deeply wounded throughout
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
experience,
Yeah.
and live this radiant life that I have today.
Yeah. And I just, my heart goes out to you that you were able to do that.
Mm,
And, and yeah, you were able to take that path and go, no, I'm going to live this life. And thank you for sharing that story. What about wisdom sitting in the body?
ah,
Like wisdom, I find sometimes it's wisdom is there, but it's not there,
mhm.
but it's there. It sort of sits there and waits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel that every time I sit down to write,
Um,
right?
yeah.
Because I don't know what words are going to
Yeah.
come out.
Yeah.
But when I just sit within my body,
Yeah.
sit in it, like just sit with it and allow the words to flow, the wisdom to flow.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, that's where my poetry comes from.
For sure. Yeah.
Same
Yeah.
as my art. I mean, I don't consciously know what I'm going to do when I start.
Exactly. Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
appears.
It's like it goes, there's a direct line from your heart to your hands or your fingers.
Yeah, and the belly, right? Because
Yes.
I see it as, this is the intellect, the
Mm-hmm.
the planner, the organizer. The belly is the wisdom font.
Mm-hmm.
It's the well of wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And the heart is that softness, that
Mm-hmm.
awareness of the value of the human spirit of all beings on this planet.
Sure.
And it's this beautiful symphony of and a dance between the three.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I always say when they're aligned,
Yeah.
that's when we have flow
Yeah.
and we find balance is when all three of those are okay. Yep. Line up. Good. That's where we are.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, and flow is energy, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so when I'm in the flow, I am connected to the universe around me.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Um, so let's get into the wisdom and the aging or the becoming. So where did that come? First of all, where did the aging to becoming, where did that jump in?
Came in a poem.
Okay.
I was writing a poem and it just flowed out. And I thought, oh yeah, I life is about becoming.
Yeah.
So I have a belief, and I believe that we are born magnificent. That is our birthright. That is our human essence. We are magnificent.
Mhm.
And then life happens and life gets messy. And all of these life messy things happen and we start to forget this magnificence. And
Mhm.
then there's a moment, it's sort of like the 12 steps, right? Of
Mhm.
the hero's journey.
Mhm.
Where we get this call and we hear it and we think, no, 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 I got to stay in the messy.
Yeah.
And then something happens. And so for me,
Mhm.
I use that relationship I was in. I was
Mhm.
50. Well, I was 49 when he was arrested, and I turned 50 in December
Mhm.
of that same year. And it was, I mean, the gratitude I have for what evolved out of that is enormous
Mhm.
because to that point, I had always been like I'd been grinding away at this remembering of my
Mhm.
magnificence.
Mhm.
And I was so broken at the end of it. I had amputated parts of my personality. Like I was a
Mhm.
shell,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
And so I got to go back into my essence and find who Louise is
Yeah.
and bring those things out. And that's a becoming. It's a
Mhm.
becoming the all of me. It's the
Yeah.
becoming of the beauty, the wonder, the magnificence of me.
Mhm.
I'm not aging in that process. I am becoming who I've
Right.
always been meant to be,
Yeah.
was born as,
Yeah.
and forgot for a while.
Exactly. And you said recently in one of your posts or one of your blogs is we're always aging.
Mm-hmm.
That one
We
sort
do.
of
You're
stuck
born.
with
We're,
me.
yeah.
Exactly. That sort of stuck like, duh, of course we are. Like it was one of those moments for me. I was like, oh yeah, yeah, you're right. Like,
And yet
yeah,
we forget, right? Like I remember
exactly.
as a little girl, I so wanted to be older.
Of course. Get to about 25 or so, and then you're like, no, gotta be younger.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, in I think my crisis age, which was really weird. My crisis age was 35. Maybe that's why
Oh,
70 was so
really?
important to me because I
Yeah,
was 35. I was
really?
pregnant with my second daughter.
Yeah.
When I tell that story, Sherry says, "Thanks a lot. You had a crisis when you're pregnant with me. Great. Thanks, Mom."
All right.
I was pregnant with her, and I remember thinking, ooh, 35. Ooh. Um, I haven't I haven't written anything that's been published, and I always wanted to be a writer.
Yeah.
And so I went off and I phoned the editor of a Sunday magazine and at Calgary Herald and said, "Hey, I have this idea for a story. I want to write it." And he said, "Oh, great idea. Go for it." I went,
Oh.
"Oh,
When we dare, great things happen.
I know." And so I did. And then I went on to publish, a lot of other articles and some other things as well. But it was that 35. And so I think maybe that's, I like things that round up. And so
Hmm.
70 became, I'm still becoming, I'm still creating, I'm still curious.
Yeah.
The parts of me that have always inspired me are the things that continue to inspire me.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. I heard something the other day. When we dare, the world always yields. Now
Mm,
that's me paraphrasing
yeah,
that. I always I thought of you when I heard that, and it's like when we actually courageous enough to dare to do something.
yeah. What, well, when you think about it, the limiting beliefs we have, those negative
Mhm.
messages that go on in our head
Of
sometimes,
course,
like,
yeah.
you're not enough. We weren't born with those.
No, no.
Nobody was born with those. So
Yeah,
we adopted them and adapted to them somewhere on our journey.
yeah.
So the daring part is to go inside and go,
Mm.
"Ooh, you don't work for me."
You know, I didn't hire you.
Uh, like, "No, you're not serving me well. I'm going to create a new story because that story is old.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's worn out."
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Imagine if we had even, I heard several research things on um that idea of drawing or or singing or dancing and being people have gone into kindergarten classrooms and said, can you draw? Yeah, here's
Mhm.
they draw whatever it is. Can you dance? Dance, they dance, and on and on. Go into a university classroom. Can you draw? Oh no, I don't have the talent to draw. Oh no, I
Yeah,
can't sing. I don't have a good voice. Just in that short amount of time, really, in our lifespan, is that time when we've been told, and those stories, we've
take hold.
adapted those stories.
Yeah. So I didn't start painting until I was about 46.
Yeah.
And all the way through on that journey, I had said, I am a writer. I
Mm,
am not an artist. And my eldest daughter, who is a phenomenal artist and has, her work is amazing. She was about 15 at the time. And she said, "Mom, I'd really, can we go buy some canvas? I really want to paint today." And I said, "Sure." So we went to the art shop, got some canvas and stuff, and came home. And out of the blue, this is body wisdom. Out of the blue, these words came out of my mouth, which was, "Oh, I think I'll paint with you today." And I fell in love.
nice. Yeah.
But what I also realized was that, wow, like for 46 years, I have said I'm not an artist because I didn't. know if I was or not, but because somewhere along the line, I had probably drawn
Yeah.
something and somebody had said, well, yeah, don't go for that for your career. And I made that my
Mm.
truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so suddenly I'm painting and I mean, I've sold my work.
Yeah. Yeah.
People buy my
It's
work.
beautiful. Yeah.
And it's like, wow, so there's a truth that's actually a lie that I've believed about myself.
Yeah.
I wonder what else there is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder what else there is.
Yeah.
And so that then became part of the becoming, right?
Yeah.
I can become an artist. I can become a poet. When it comes to the singing for my 70th birthday. So when I was 16, I loved to sing and I sang in a little folk group. But right. And so I used to go in the talent contests at school. And I go into the talent show, and my brother, being the good older brother, I won second prize. And we're walking home. My parents weren't able to make it. And we're walking home, and my brother goes, you're not bad. You're not very good. They really only gave you that
No.
blah, 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 right? So I go, oh, and I quit singing in public.
Right there. Wow.
So I coach in a program called Discovery, and it's a 5-day experiential personal development program. And there's always on Sunday a spiritual service, and someone from, the group
Mm.
will sing a song, play a guitar or something. I don't play guitar. So I asked one of the other coaches if he would play the guitar for me, because before my 70th birthday, I wanted to sing in front of a group, a crowd of people. I needed to close the loop on that story.
Yeah.
And because it always bothered me that I just quit singing like that. So anyway, in September last year, I sang in front of 200 people, and I sang the very same song I
Oh,
sang
did
when
you? Oh,
I
oh,
did, and it
oh,
was
wow.
Joni Mitchell's Both Sides Now.
I knew you said.
And I
Oh,
didn't care if how I sounded. I really didn't. I
yeah.
just wanted the freedom of doing this thing that said to my former self,
Mm,
it's okay. We got
okay.
this,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're good.
Oh, that's awesome. What a beautiful, not even gonna say story. What a beautiful becoming.
Yeah.
And that circular going back to before we ever listened to those or before we were ever given those
Yeah.
limiting beliefs. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. So I'm cognizant of our time here, but this is just coming up for me. So if you could I'm going to do three different age groups, and if you could give them a piece of wisdom.
Ooh.
So like say teen to 25. Teen to 25. So under 10 we'll believe that they just do their thing and bless them.
Yeah.
So 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 teen to 25, what would you give as a piece of wisdom for?
Well, the thing that pops into my head right away is just be yourself.
Mm,
Be wild. Be like, experience it all.
yeah.
Do not diminish yourself to fit in. Just be wild.
That's so hard in this society sometimes
Yeah.
because it's looked at as, oh, don't do that. So
Yeah.
great. So those parenting years.
Mm. Listen to your mom. No, I'd love to say that, but no, again, it comes to that in the parenting years, it's going to be okay.
Uh,
Right? Our job as a parent is to love our child and support them in basically reaching their teens,
mhm,
so that mine was always with my daughters, right? I wanted them to be strong-willed. I wanted them to be independent. I wanted them to know they had a voice and to use it. And I wanted
mhm.
them to be courageous, to step into life with gusto, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I wanted them to wait until they were 18. Thank you very much when they left home. And until
Within
then,
these
just do it.
parameters.
But you can't, right? In order
Yeah,
for that
yeah,
to happen, I had to be
yeah.
the mother who supported them in doing those things. And my daughters came through that hell of a relationship when I disappeared for 3 months and
Yeah,
deserted them.
yeah.
And they are amazing young women. Well, they're in
Mhm.
their 30s. They're still young. But we have a very strong, powerful relationship, the three of us today.
Lovely.
And so that foundation was built back then. It wasn't
Yes.
built in their, teens when all of this happened. It was built before that. And
Yeah.
love was at the foundation of it.
Of that. Oh, yeah.
So it
Yeah.
is just, it's all going to be okay.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah.
Just love.
Yeah. Yeah. So then I guess as I'm going there, we've got maiden, we have mother,
Mm-hmm.
and again, this word, I think we have to embrace this word, but crone.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to embrace that word that it's, if we look at the original crone, it was this elder, it was this woman that was had all this life experience and we could sit in a circle with and learn from. So as those that are coming and becoming into that crone age, what would be your wisdom for them or in it? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I would have to say shine. Shine bright. Shine
Mm,
as bright as you possibly can.
I
Just
love that.
shine. Glimmer, right? Just
Yeah.
be the glimmer, be the shimmer, be the light, and don't take yourself so seriously. Like the
Mm.
stars, I don't think the stars take themselves seriously at all because they're always twinkling, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So twinkle.
Yeah. 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 Interesting. I love those. I love those. Thank you. Um,
I love them. Those were great questions. Great. Yeah, I had
that just
lots
came
of,
into my heart. And it's like, no, we're gonna split this up and so tell us what you've got going on. I know you've got a couple things that you do and your course and your She Dares Facebook page, but I'd love to just for you to have some time here just to share what those are for folks.
sure. So the She Dares Facebook group is for women,
Mhm.
primarily, 50 plus, but we don't hold back on age. It's not about age. It's about the willingness to talk about aging, to look at aging as a gift, as an opportunity, as the possibility of becoming more, of
Mhm.
shining bright. And so there are 260 women in it now about that.
Nice.
And my goal is to continue to grow the community so that we can have these rich conversations and not be afraid of aging
Mhm.
and to just go, yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And then my radiant bold aging is it's really to do with my She Dares program, and it's the tagline for it, radiant
Mhm.
bold aging, which is how I want to age. I want to continue to just radiate joy, passion, and to be bold in what I do so that no matter my age, I continue to feel alive and enlivened by life and to love life. I
Mhm.
don't care. I love life and I want to stay loving life. I love me and I want to stay loving me. And then within that, I have my rewrite journey, which is an 8-week program. And the rewrite journey is about going back
Mhm.
to look at those intersections where things happened and we took on these messages that don't serve us, but there were gems in there too.
Mhm.
Like being told I asked too many questions really
Mhm.
became something that inspired me to keep asking questions because I love to be contrary.
Yep.
But it fed my curiosity. Why do you not want me to ask questions? Right. And
Yeah.
so the gem is and it's, all of it has everything that happens in our life has a gift. It has a value for us. It's just we have to take the time to find the value. So the rewrite journey is about finding the gems and then rewriting our story of our life
Mhm.
through the strength and courage and resilience and possibilities that brought us to this moment in time.
Mhm.
And from this moment of being, standing in our truth and our magnificence and our beauty, what do we envision for the future? And how do we not just envision it, but how are we going to step into it and live it as powerful, strong, courageous women. And
Mm,
that's what the rewrite journey is about.
love it. Love it. Imagine just a world of women that just, a community of women that just
Yeah,
stepped into that. It's just, it's juicy. That's the only
we're
word I can
doing it.
think of is we are,
Yeah, it is
it
juicy, and
is,
we
but
are
it's
doing it.
juicy
We
and
look
it's
at you. Look at what
powerful.
you're doing.
Yeah, it's just, it's powerful, but not in
Mm.
a powerful, it's almost like shifting the lens on power.
Yes.
Been a word that I've sort of maybe struggled with because it has such a negative a connotation that's not in a way we like, a good way. So it's this rewriting power,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. It is.
it's a juicy way of rewriting it, and I love that, and it's fun.
Yeah.
It's
And it's fun.
fun.
It's
It's
got
like
to be
why
fun.
can't we? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We got to quit taking ourselves so seriously. I mean,
Come
seriously.
on. Louise, I love talking to you. You are
I,
a wise, wonderful woman. And I just, I always think of there's that poem out there, like our goal isn't to go quietly to our,
into the night.
to the end, but to slide in like it's home plate and
Yeah.
tattered and torn and muddy and
Ah, messy.
and messy and with a giant smile in our heart and a smile on our face. And that's yeah.
Yeah. And so that the legacy we leave is one of joy, right?
Mm.
One of a life so richly lived that people have been enriched and continue that richness as
Well,
they move forward.
yeah, and that's it. I've recently been reading about the legacy, and a legacy we don't even necessarily see. Right? Legacy is something that the next generation gets to benefit from.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that yeah.
Well, and just really quick,
Yeah, no,
my youngest daughter and my eldest daughter and I were having dinner for my 70th birthday, and my youngest daughter was looking at this new job and what have you, and she said, yeah, and they asked me what kind of leader do I want to be, and she said, and so I said, oh, so what did you tell them? And she said, well, actually, I told them I want to be a leader like my mother,
oh,
and I thought,
oh,
I know,
I
it was just like,
know.
oh, it was just an
Oh,
incredible gift, right?
yeah,
Because what
yeah,
she saw in me is some of her
yeah,
friends actually ended up working for me, in their summer student days and what have you,
yeah,
and uh, and so she knew what kind of, and so that was, yeah, it was just like
yeah,
that's my legacy.
yeah. Yeah, and I've had one of those where my daughter called me, and I think she was probably 18, 19, and called me one day, and she's like, Mom, I get it. I'm like, what? And she goes, I get why, how, I get you, and I get why you do what you do and how you do it, and I appreciate it. And it's like, oh, okay, I need to take a breath. Like, like just that moment where they're like, I get it. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, so I hear you on that one. Well, with that, I think it's time to close our beautiful, beautiful, joyous circle. And thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you all, everybody else that is here either on YouTube or Apple or Spotify, wherever you're listening or watching this. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for just not being here alone and joining this circle that we call life. And I don't think the runway is straight. I think the runway is circular.
Yeah.
That runway goes around in a spiral, and it's that's that beautiful thing. So if you are hearing this, I have something called share it forward. Please share it forward. You never know who needs to hear these words at this time. So please, if you can, share it forward. Join us over at Inspire Me Forward on Facebook. Everything sort of goes and filters through there. And thank you, Louise, and thank you everybody else that has joined us to have the courage just to share stories and share your wisdom. And that's just, for the heart and from the heart is sort of what it's all about. So thank you.
Thank you. Mwah. Thank you so much.